Do you ever get so filled with rage and bloodlust that you just want to bite your opponent's neck? These guys do. Let's talk tactics about Blood Claws.
Anvil of War! Let's talk tactics!
So today we're discussing the Blood Claws. These are a mainstay troop choice from the Space Wolf Codex. Basic stat line of a Space Marine. They have a ballistic skill of 4+, so not quite as good at shooting as a basic Space Marine, but at the same time, you don't want these guys shooting too often. You want them charging, getting in the face of your opponent. There's a reason that these guys can be taken in a 15-man, technically 16-man blob of troops. And the reason for that is that you want them to get up the table and charge in. They're great at munching down the opponent's chaff troops, the basic infantry, and the hordes of infantry that you might be facing, and is very common in this edition of Warhammer 40,000. These guys make quick work of big squads like that. They charge in, and just the sheer complement of attacks and the sheer strength of these guys being basic Space Marines means that they're going to be able to duke it out with most other basic infantry and come out on top at the end. So let's talk about their statistics. As I said, ballistic skill 4+, so that's not that great. Weapon skill 3+, typical Space Marine. Strength and toughness 4. Toughness 4 is fantastic. Strength 4 is great, especially when you combine it with their equipment options. Leadership, again, typical Space Marine stat line for leadership. The only thing I will say is that they do have the rule of headstrong. Basically, that means that they have to charge the nearest target unless they have a wolf guard in the unit. So pretty much an auto include to throw a wolf guard in every unit of Blood Claws. I think it's almost mandatory. The Blood Claw special rule of Berserk Charge gives them +1 to attack on the charge, and it also applies to the wolf guard in the unit as well. So he's getting an additional attack. He's already at 2 attacks, so equip him accordingly. My personal preference for taking these guys is to max out the squad, take a squad of 15 or 16. Sometimes you might want to go with that 15-man or 14-man squad, or even a 10-man squad, depending on the transport that you might be throwing in with these guys. I really like the Stormwolf. Speaking of Stormwolf, the reason I like this is just because it can get across the table turn 1. It has really good shooting. It has really good weaponry. And then turn 1, it's across the table. These guys jump out and they're able to charge, getting that 3-inch move from the base of this model, and then for the deployment, and then another 6-inch movement, and then the charge. You can get these guys where they need to go, and be a little bit more, rest a little easier knowing that they're going to get where they need to go safer. So talking about preferences, my preferred equipment option for this unit, obviously the basic guys, bolt pistol and chainsword is the only option, but it really comes down to the sergeant and the wolf guard. Now personally, the wolf guard, or sorry, the Blood Claw sergeant, he has a few options. He can take a power sword, he can take a power axe, he can take all of the power weapons. For some reason he can't at the moment, unless they FAQ it in the future, take like a frost axe or a frost sword or any of the special Space Wolf variations of like a power sword, etc. But I think the #1 strength for Space Wolves right now with their current chapter tactics in the Codex is the ability to get +1 to hit on the charge, if charged or if heroically intervening. I think that weapons that are at -1 to hit are going to be all over the place in Space Wolf armies, and should be all over the place in Space Wolf armies, especially melee-oriented Space Wolf armies. So I'm going to say a Power Fist is the right option on a sergeant in this squad. He's going to get the -1 to hit when he's swinging, but he's getting +1, and most times you're going to be charging, have been charged. He's not doing any heroic interventions, but at least when he gets stuck in, that -1 is going to be counteracted by the +1, and he'll be hitting on 3 pluses with a power fist, which is pretty nasty. He also gets the 2 attacks, and he gets the +1 attack on the charge that the rest of the Blood Claws get. So 3 attacks with the power fist hitting on 3s can be pretty scary, and if put in the right spot in your opponent's line, can do some damage and wreak havoc. As far as the Wolf Guard is concerned, there's a lot of different options. There's a lot of really good options that I think you could go with this guy. I think my personal preference is to take the 2 Frost Claws, or Wolf Claws, sorry. The reason for that is the Wolf Claws, they get the +1 strength. They also get the typical Lightning Claw bonuses, so they're getting the high AP, they're getting the +1 attack, and they're getting the for having a pair, +1 attack, and then they're also getting the reroll to wound, which is really, really nasty on this guy. He's going to have 2 attacks base, another attack on the charge, and then another attack for the pair of Wolf Claws. So 4 Lightning Claw +1 strength Lightning Claw attacks it's pretty scary. He also gets that +1 to hit, so he's hitting on 2s. So he's really good at just giving that little extra edge to their ability to put out a obscene amount of attacks and put some damage through. Alternatively, if I was trying to really go with the whole theme of the +1 to hit weapons, or sorry, the -1 to hit weapons, getting that +1, I'd probably go in the direction of giving him like a Thunderhammer Storm Shield or another Power Fist, but I think the Thunderhammer Storm Shield is really the way to go. I think it's just a little too points heavy of an investment into an already points heavy squad. And I just think, you're really just praying for a specific stratagem, which we'll talk about in a second, but I don't think it's really necessary. I think the best way to go with him is just to complement the volume of attacks and get that high AP and just get stuck in and kill the chaff in the opponent's army. So going into synergy with other units or with characters, I think these guys are pretty good at standing by themselves. I think they're, I don't really think that you really need to worry about bubbling these guys up with other units. If you're trying to go for a heavy foot slogging army and put more bodies on the table and go for a lot of bodies on the table, I don't think Space Wolves are that army. I think they're a small elite army, and these are the guys that fill that spot of putting multiple bodies on the table, but they're not cheap enough to really fully fill that position. So I think their strength comes with a couple stratagems, using a couple stratagems, or throwing them in a transport and getting them up the table where they need to go intact. But that being said, there's certain characters that do complement them and could give them a little bit of an edge if needed. Number 1, Wolf Lord. If there's a Wolf Lord within 6 inches of them, giving them the rerolls to hit, reroll 1s to hit. That's pretty solid. I think that's a good thing for them having that ability to get more attacks through. They're hitting on 3s, and then they have so many attacks that hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s is pretty awesome. But I think the one character that benefits them more, or that complements them more, is the Wolfguard Battle Leader. I think a Wolfguard Battle Leader having the ability to drop in, if it's in Terminator armor, for example, being able to drop in, stay within the bubble, have these guys charge in and get into combat with what they need to get in combat, maybe stretch a couple guys out and stay within that bubble, and then giving them the reroll 1s to wound. That's a lot more, I think, useful on these guys, because they are only strength 4, so if they're striking against toughness 4 or higher stuff, then again, they're not really the thing in your army that you want to be doing that against. There's lots of stuff in a Space Wolf army that is better at hitting higher toughness stuff, but at the same time, if you get in a situation where you're doing that, I think that the +1 to wound complements these guys better. And again, Wolfguard Battle Leader in Terminator armor can deep strike in and be placed where you need him to be. Throwing him in a spot where he's going to benefit several units in your line, in your battle line, is probably the way to go. A regular Wolfguard Battle Leader in power armor and throwing them inside like a Storm Wolf with the squad is another option. I think there's a few different options that really complement these guys in that sense. So now we're going to move on to stratagems. So as far as stratagems in regards to these guys, pre-deployment, Cunning of the Wolf, the ability to take a Space Wolf infantry squad, not have them deploy on the table, have them deploy from 6 inches from any board edge and more than 9 inches away from any enemy, turn 2 because of the FAQ/chapter approves. But they're going to show up on a table edge within 6 inches of a table edge, more than 9 inches away. And if you get a charge off, you can get them without having to spend the tax of one of these guys that are not cheap. Having these guys be able to show up on the enemy's flank and charge something at any given point after turn 2 is pretty substantial. I think it's going to be one of the best uses for these guys because they are just Space Marines. They are just guys in power armor, so they are going to get chewed up a lot, I think, on the tabletop, trying to rush across the table. Other option is throwing Cloak by the Storm on these guys from a Rune Priest nearby and having a whole army moving, a whole basically battle line moving up with that Rune Priest and using that bubble, the -1 to hit bubble after he gets a successful spell off. That's an option. It's definitely something you could do. Now, it only lasts for the turn and it's 3 command points to use, so I think I honestly, in an elite army where you're already having minimal command points, I don't think spending 3 command points on something like that is worthwhile. I think spending the 1 command point, throwing these guys in the reserves and being able to basically outflank them, have them walk on the table is the way to go. So moving on, basic stratagems for these guys, or stratagems that are specific. There's only really one: overwhelming impetuosity. Anyways, I don't know if I said that right, but that basically gives these guys the ability to re-roll 1s if they're within 1 inch. If they successfully charge and they're within 1 inch of a unit that has a higher power rating than them. Now, a full complement of these guys is a pretty high power rating, so it's really going to be situational again, and it's only 1 command point to use it, so that's kind of good. But I think in this situation, you're charging in, you're now within 1 inch of an opponent that's higher power rating than you, and you use that stratagem, it's only 1 point, and then you're getting reroll to hits for everything. Where that's really useful is the 3+ to hit 4 attacks on the 3 attacks on the sergeant. That's really nasty. So the last stratagem I'm going to touch on, there are several other stratagems that could apply to these guys and could affect them, but I think they're all very situational, and they're not really like stratagems that would complement these guys. So I'm going to talk really quickly about one stratagem though that is situational, but it's my favorite stratagem, and I'm still waiting for the day for my Wolf Guard or my sergeant in the squad to be able to use it. But one of these days it'll happen, and I'll be super happy when it does. It's the Lone Wolf stratagem. I mean, it's 1 command point, and basically you can turn this guy into a character. He gets the buffs, he gets the +1 attack, he gets the wounds, and he becomes a character, so he's not targetable if he's not the closest model, which is amazing. Having, the pair of lightning claws, Wolf Guard, turn into 5 attacks monster, running up the table and charging in and finishing off, a hefty pointed monster or something on the opponent's side, or a character. That could be great. I'm really hoping that eventually it'll happen for me, but as of yet, we have had no success. So pray for me, people. Pray for me. Pray to Russ that it'll happen before the wolf time ends.
Sponsored by...
If you liked our video, you should probably subscribe. There's an icon on the screen right here. Click it and it'll automatically subscribe you and you'll be notified when we're getting more videos out. You get ever, man,
Giver.
I'm getting tired. You get ever,